We made this.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello everyone and welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, the Red Dwarf podcast here on the We Made This podcast network. And this week we are going to be talking about Cesium, Frankolific, Mixi, Alabidium, Rixie, Dixie, Doxy, Drexy, Droxide.
What?
You can say that again.
Yes! I did it!
Sorry, I missed. Sorry, Kurt. I was distracted. What did you say? Sorry.
I said Cesium, Frankolific, Mixi, Alabidium, Rixie, Dixie, Droxy. Got it wrong that time. Cesium, Frankolific, Mixi, Alabidium, Rixie, Dixie, Doxy, Drexy, Droxide.
Reverse the polarity of the neutron flow.
Hello.
That was all right, wasn't it? There you go. That's it. I can now go home. See you later.
Thank you for listening to Shipwrecked and Comatose, and until next time.
Cesium, Frankolific, Mixi, Alabidium, Rixie, Dixie, Doxy, Drexy, Droxide.
Woo!
We are talking about only the good this week, and joining me for the third week in a row is Mark Adams and Matt Latham. Mark, how are you doing, my good friend?
I'm all right. I started drinking because we were talking about Pete, and now I'm 2/3 of the bottle through, so today will be interesting.
Man, it's taken you 1 week to go through with 2/3 of a bottle of wine. Wink.
Lol. You know I'm drunk, right? If I'm saying lol rather than actually laughing. 3/4 of the bottle. I've just looked at the bottle and I'm topping up my glass.
So yes, we are talking about only the good. Series 8, episode
I'm good.
8.
I'm good, Kurt. Thanks for asking.
I'm not asking you. I've had a few to drink now, mate.
Yeah.
Matt Latham, how are you doing, sir?
I'm all right, thank you very much.
Okay, we are going to be talking. Me and Mark are going to be talking about Series 8, Episode 8, directed by Ed By and written by Doug Naylor. It was the original
No
air
shit.
date.
I mean, it's not like they haven't been doing it for forever. This
5th of April, 1999. Mark, how are you doing? And what do you think of this episode?
Yeah, this episode is good, not great. I think Matt's got significantly stronger opinions than me on this.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got.
Does that mean we have to ask him?
Well,
Does that mean I have to ask him?
Oh,
Okay.
I forgot he was here. To be honest with you,
Matt, come on, give us your overview before we start diving into the episode.
Yeah. So, this is. No, I think we're again going to be talking about the end of another era of the show because this is the last ever BBC
Yes.
thing. So there's that kind of weight on its shoulders. Well, retroactively anyway, because but I've always found it to be an interesting episode, particularly in its place in the ongoing narrative of the show and onwards and stuff. But also, I think one of the key things is also, I think it's particularly with a certain character where it feels like they've become kind of slightly stagnant in terms of like closing an arc and not realizing that they've already kind of done something similar. And without trying to spoil too much, we'll do again repeatedly.
you've lost me.
Effectively, Rimmer's story is repaid several times in the next few series, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
in various different forms.
And like one of the reasons I kind of wanted to do Out of Time was, I think, because it's a really kind of nice kind of closer and like a moment of heroism.
You got it right first time, didn't you? Heroism.
I'm drunk and I can say heroism.
Yeah, I'm drunk on water. I think Seven Trent are spiking my water with like absinthe or something.
Have you ever had absinthe? It's disappointing. It just tastes like aniseed and does nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is like kind of them starting to kind of repeat certain beats with Rimmer. So like they kind of start to not to the extent of Out of Time where he has that kind of like moment of crap, I've got to do something un-Rimmer like to kind of save us from being killed. And yeah, so they do the kind of same thing with Rimmer's kind of character arc, where he suddenly had this kind of like streak of, well, I'll have to do something to try and save the day, which is like character growth. But they get it kind of gets away with it because it's technically not the Rimmer that we know. It's like a very
one
kind
of the 1,000 Rimmers that we've had before.
Yeah.
We have skipped to the end of the episode immediately, for fuck's sake. But what I was going to say at the end of this episode, rather than now, was that it feels like... Did you watch the new Star Wars, where the first I'm crap with the names.
Force Awakens.
Yeah, The Force Awakens was a film about how history repeats itself.
Yeah.
And people hated it because it was similar to previous plots, but that was the fucking point. The whole fucking point of the film was it was about history repeats itself. And I loved that. The second two, not so good. But The Force Awakens was so good. And the parallels between that and the previous film was... it was magnificent. And it's like Star Wars fans are stupid or something. Oh...
Just thinking on just what you're saying there, just while I've got it in my head, I don't think we've talked that much about Star Wars. We've always referred to Red Dwarf in Star Trek terms. Well, obviously there's probably more of a Star Trek lean because of me for start off, but I'd see what you mean. But you're right. You're absolutely right that Force Awakens is about that circular thing, and it was actually filmed near me. Actually, some of the footage of it. So.
I was livid that Star Wars fans were so stupid that it was like, this film is genius because it is about how history repeats itself. Yes, of course, these parallels are very similar to the previous films, and that was deliberate, and it's really cool, and it's really grim and a lot darker than you fucking realised. And I like how the end of this episode is exactly like the end of Out of Time. It is Rimmer really stepping up to the plate and a coward actually being the guy that tries to save the fucking world and causes a cliffhanger that isn't resolved properly. And I'm led to believe that this cliffhanger isn't resolved properly. So
I can't. We've told you this. We can't tell you what happens.
I mean, Back to Earth is so weird because I don't really know where Back to Earth sits, and I don't really know how series 10 and 12 sit with it, but I'm led to believe from what I've seen online that essentially this cliffhanger is ignored completely.
He's watching stuff. He's reading stuff. He knows things that we told him not to look at.
No. I've been
Mark's
well behaved,
naughty.
actually.
Mark's been naughty.
I'm fucking right. I am painfully, lawfully good. And I have behaved, and I've hated every fucking minute of behaving. I want to watch it all. I want to watch it all. I want to watch it all. And I want to watch it now. But I'm
going to listen to that when I go to bed.
I will be. Things though. This is a conversation. I would like to. I mean,
how have we skipped to the end already?
Because Matt's been waiting, like you've been waiting to watch this season as a whole. The series as a whole. Matt's been waiting to talk about this topic since season 1.
Yeah, because as I said,
he's excited.
Rimmer's my favourite character, and but there are issues I kind of had particularly onwards. I'll be very interested to get your view for you to rewatch season 8 once you've seen everything else.
I have no plans to rewatch season 8.
Or at least revisit this episode, or at least revisit what happens with Rimmer in this one after you've seen like everything all the way up to the Promised Land. Because I'll be interested, and I'll be interested to get your viewpoint in that. But I think I know we skipped to the ending, but I do think the kind of episode is kind of hinges on what happens at the end, and in terms of it. So I think it all leads up to that, and I think the kind of theme of this episode is what happens with Rimmer. And
you're absolutely right. The whole premise of this episode is more about, we've got this amazing cliffhanger and here's how we get there. And what's really fucking tragic is that this was the last series of Red Dwarf, and obviously they wouldn't have done this if they hadn't have expected to get a movie out of it, which they never did.
Did you watch the alternative ending?
No.
There's an alternative ending?
There's an alternative ending.
Yeah.
Kurt.
Right, okay, hang on a second, right? Let's go and do this now. Hang on, let me.
You actually want us to watch this live?
Let's watch it live, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't have to edit it. I can edit it out, but I can share my screen with you.
No, let's just fucking watch it live and
go on then, yeah.
let's live commentate now.
Yeah.
Look at me being spontaneous because drunk. Right. Okay. So what we're going to do is Matt and I didn't know about the alternative ending. We're actually going to kind of live commentate as the alternative ending goes. Let's get it done.
I'm going to share my screen. Hang on a second.
Podcasting's wild.
and already this has been a lot more interesting than the Pete Part 2.
Yeah. Can you hear that?
Yep.
Is it loud enough?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, this is 4 minutes 27 seconds. I didn't expect to be doing.
Yeah.
Think that's fixed it? Powering up the machine. Yes.
I fucking love Chloe Annette, you know. What?
What?
There you go.
Did it. The antidote.
What?
You're going to have to return to the mirror universe and memorize the formula.
So he's going to have to memorize that formula. He has to go back into the mirror universe.
But what's funny is that, like, the chocolate machine's dialogue was Kachansky's. Because I'm pretty sure the chocolate machine's...
Yeah, it says that.
Yeah.
Cesium, francolithic, mixialabidium,
Rixie, Dixie, Doxy, Drexy, Droxide.
Cesium.
No.
Hang on.
This is funny, but it's not as dramatic.
Yeah.
So we've still got the audience there as well.
Yeah. That's funny. That is funny. That's funny.
2 hours later.
Cesium, francolithic, mixialabidium, rixie, dixie, doxy, dexy, droxide.
Doesn't get it right. It's Drexy, Doxide.
Yes!
Amazing.
Oh, cesium, francolithic, mixialabidium, rixie, dixie, doxy, dexydroxide.
Oh, maybe I've got Drexy wrong.
I bet that was hard for
Yeah.
Crichton.
Cesium, francolithic, mixialabidium, rixie, dixie, doxy, dexydroxide. It's really famous.
We used to use it in chemistry all the time. Cesium, francolithic, mixialabidium, rixie, dixie, doxy, dexydroxide. Not to be confused with cesium, francolithic, mixialabidium, rixie, dexy, dixie, doxydroxide. It's a completely different compound altogether.
But Lister does that.
Now, that one I've heard of.
Even better. That face. Oh, you can see the green screen behind him on that scene.
So now we've got Crichton pouring the
Jizz.
substance.
That's
Jizz.
definitely jizz. That's not jizz. If your jizz looks like that, that's not good.
Well, what if Jizz was going back up inside?
I don't want that either. But I just love seeing Chloe Anna because I know she's gone after this. Smoking on British television doesn't happen anymore.
No.
And I owe you
Oh, you this.
Every dog has his day.
Ow. That's a concussion.
the day, and I'm the dog.
And that was the alternative ending. Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't know that.
No.
So what do you think? What do you think to that ending then? I mean, we've talked right at the very end of the very first part of the episode, but
I had no idea there was an alternative. And whilst it's a lot more low key and a lot less dramatic, it feels a little bit more Red Dwarf.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, what 4.5 minutes?
yeah,
It felt really slow in its pacing, and as much as funny as it was with like repeatedly going in and remember trying to get it off, it was like really kind of slow, and I think the pacing was kind of off. I mean,
but you could have edited that quicker.
Yeah.
Because obviously you got to remember it wasn't a full edit for the episode. So
I think maybe this is an issue that Red Dwarf has had across the last 8 series, is that it does tend to rely on dramatic as well as comedic, and that is tough to do. And the alternative ending is funnier and cleverer and much more along Red Dwarf's vibe, whereas the ends that we see to Only the Good, similarly as the end of Series 6 as well, is that it is incredibly dramatic. And like, I remember more with Series 6, but also with this, I remember being like, fuck, a cliffhanger and a fucking sitcom. But that was what was unique about Red Dwarf, is that they fucked with things and they played and they did things that you didn't expect them to do, and they kind of hit you in the feels when you weren't ready for it. And the fact they did it again at the end of Series 8 after they did it in Series 6, it's kind of like almost like flicking the V's. We got you again.
Yeah, I think the impact of it is probably better because I think the impact of Out of Time and the ending I think is a lot more memorable. And I think again to kind of as Tony Black, who my guest on the British Empire and also host of the You Have Been Watching sister show.
Is this the same Tony Black doesn't realise he's on a Red Dwarf podcast?
Yeah, it's the same.
Okay.
It's the same.
Just want to check that.
Yeah.
Just wanted to check that.
But I think what I'd say I've known him for.
He'll never listen to this anyway. So.
Yeah. I say I've known him for years, but one of the things he's always maintained is that when it comes to kind of comedy and the balance of drama, British sitcoms can get that correct. So like. Blackadder goes forth, One Foot in the Grave, The Royal Family. That there's always because of like our natural kind of ability to like our viewpoints of like towards comedy and the national kind of like sense of humor, we can somehow drift into the kind of more dramatic stuff. I mean, like one of the several endings of Only Fools and Horses. I think the last one they actually did, the last 10 minutes of that is proper serious. There's not a joke in that at all.
Yeah.
But the show kind of earns that. It's the same with Blackadder Goes Forth, where it kind of earns that pathos ending.
There's nothing quite like the ending of Blackadder Goes Forth. I don't know. I still don't know how they get away with it. It was supposed to be funny, but just like you pick the least funny premise and then you make it funny, and then you go, we need to make this thing serious again.
Yeah.
Holy fucking fuck. Maybe I'm biased, but it seems to me like using the sitcom to deliver a real, true message has never been done better than in the ending of Blackadder Goes Forth. And, Red Dwarf hasn't achieved that, but it really does build your love of these characters, the characterization. Okay, season 8 didn't do it great. Season 6 did. But the ending of this, where it is like a fuck, what's going to happen now, still hits because they've established those characters that you love better in previous seasons. And I just feel like it's braver in British sitcoms than it is in any American shit. You wouldn't get mixing things up like this in an American sitcom.
Although then we are kind of robbed of what I think is a really good joke of Lister repeating the whole thing and then saying, "Oh, it often gets mixed up with so."
The 2 hours later thing is great.
Yeah.
It's like 2 hours later. It's like exactly what you said, Mark. And this was a slight insight to me about what Red Dwarf 10 is going to be like, because that's the exact thing that I want to do. That is exactly what we just did there, which was watch something together and go, oh, fucking hell. You know what I mean? That's what I want to see, because me and Matt have been going on about Trojan for so long, probably over-egging it, being honest with you, because we actually really enjoy that episode. I'm not saying it's the best Red Dwarf in history. It isn't, but there's certain things in it that's really good, and I want to see someone's first reaction to that. And that's the reason why. That's the whole reason why. It's and the fact that Red Dwarf had been gone so long. And going back to your dramatic thing, like, this is what I was kind of talking about, I think, last week with Doug Naylor does have the ability to add drama to his shows. That there is, and goes back to Matt's point in the very top of the hour with what the problem with Red Dwarf is moving forward. And I'll equate it to the beginning of season 3 or series 3, is that the soft reboot a lot. So because it's kind of like you've got your batch of like this, what happens here, then you got Back to Earth, then there's a gap, and then you've got 10. You know what I mean? Then they get 11 and 12, and 11 and 12 are filmed back to back. So
it's not a surprise.
Kind of reboots every so often.
It's not a surprise to me that they soft reboot. In fact, I had guessed that it was a massive reboot and they don't explain why Rimmer's a hologram and they just went to a status quo of 4, 5, 6 because that was when Red Dwarf was at its most popular. That is my assumption about what happens after this. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's not spoilers because I've kind of assumed something that I think I'm right about.
I will say, Series 8, this episode is referenced. That's what I will say.
Okay.
And I've mentioned this a couple of times.
Genuinely surprised.
There's a callback to this episode. So that's all I'll say about it. I think I mentioned it before. You might have missed me here saying that. But yeah, this episode is referenced. So it's not forgotten, but at the same time, it's one of those things where, you can say something about, I don't know, a TV show that you can mention someone had some toast. Like toasty or whatever. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it's something that's like, oh, right. You know what I mean? And you go, ooh, right, okay, it's gonna be good. You know what I mean? And that's all I'll say about it. But what Matt's point is that Rimmer's character from here on in has that soft reboot almost every time.
Yeah,
that's the problem. It doesn't continue.
Right.
It's kind of like there's a bit of soft. Every time there's a story event with Rimmer, it seems like we've had this conversation and you're doing it slightly differently, but it's the same conversation we're having. That's the problem. That's what happens moving forward.
Yeah, I'm not going to be, because I know which episodes of Series 10 I've claimed, I'm not going to be on the next major Rimmer episode. But yeah, I'll be interested to see another person's take on the episode I'm thinking of.
I just love how this podcast has changed almost as a parallel to the way that it changed as a program with Red Dwarf. I mean, obviously we're truncating the amount of time between things, but we also put a lot of fucking specials in between shit. So it's weird how we've got this strange parallel, and I like that. And it's organic and it's not deliberate, and we're cool. We rock. And I've drunk too much wine.
Yeah.
It's all right. It's fine.
But that's kind of like, but I do think that kind of ending kind of, and as much as we've jumped to that first, I do think that anchors the episode. But yeah, and I think, and going back to your original question, Kurt, I do like this one.
So my point was going to be that it's one of those things, and it's interesting in TV landscape that there's a couple of things I want to mention. So the first one being that the BBC were the ones that decided not to proceed with anything new. It was the BBC who was like, no, we want to go a different direction. So it left Red Dwarf in no man's land, effectively. That's kind of what happened.
Let's be blunt. The BBC gave us 8 series of Red Dwarf. And that is probably 5 or 6 series more than the vast majority of British sitcoms. You either get sitcoms that last forever or last for never, and I'm just glad we got what we got from the Beeb.
Yeah. Well, I was liking that. Well, it's a mute argument now because they're bringing it back. 40 Towers, or The Office, the original Office. You kind of get like a short amount of episodes, which is classed as an absolute genuine classic, and then you've got Red Dwarf, who it can never die, but both have its pros and cons about that.
Why did you have to bring up Fawlty Towers? I've now got to say, fuck you, John Cleese, you're a cunt. I've got to do it.
Well, I know that. I know.
I've got to. Anybody who wants to be on, I'm not even going to name that channel because I don't want people to look it up, but anybody who wants to be on the fucking racist British TV channel can get in the sea and stay there. Fuck you, John Cleese. You made a perfect television show in Fawlty Towers. And now your inadverted commas anti-woke thing. Fuck you. Woke means you actually care about what other people feel. Fuck you, John Cleese. You are a genius who has turned into a monster.
That wasn't my point. My point being, okay, let's use The Office. as an example.
There we
So,
go. I mean, Ricky
right,
Gervais
so
isn't great either, but I don't hate him like I hate John Cleese.
But what I'm saying is that you either have something like The Office, which only lasts for so long and is classed as a classic, or you have Red Dwarf, who just never ends. You know, and it's a behemoth of a machine that just keeps going.
Yeah.
Nothing can kill it. You know what I mean? It just keeps going. And you know, we all know that, like, post 6, there's elements that it drops off a cliff, and so for a lot of reasons. But and there's a lot of good things that happen, but it's never going to be the same as 1 to 6. It's not. At the end of the day.
But what's fascinating about Red Dwarf is that it isn't quite Last of the Summer Wine. It still hits again and again. It has some misses, but Last of the Summer Wine was just there for 20 years. And Red Dwarf is so much better than that. And we are becoming You Have Been Watching. So let's stop.
We are.
You Have Been Watching is the We Made This Podcast Network's podcast about British sitcoms, hosted by Tony Black. We love Tony Black. He is our leader.
We do love him. We don't...
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Rob. Yeah, we definitely like Rob.
I like Rob more. It's just that we have to talk about Tony because he is our leader. Should we talk about this episode rather than the ending and about our boss?
Let's go to the beginning of this episode. This is a really, really random episode, and I quite like it.
I do, actually. I think this is a fascinating way to end the Beeb run by you and me being drunk and Matt judging us and starting to talk about the end before we talk about anything else about the episode.
Well, that's him. He's the one that wasn't even drinking. He's the one that started it.
Is he a bad influence on us?
Cesium francolithic, mixy albidium, rixy dixy, doxy, dexydroxide. I've got an extra R in. I shouldn't have done that.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
So every time I did it, it was one letter out. But that'll do me. So cesium francolithic, mixy albidium, rixy dixy, doxy dexydroxide is what I should have said.
I'm glad.
There you go. Beginning of this episode starts with the chameleonic life form spelling issues, which is, I like it, especially the massage ends.
We had a massage with a fucking dinosaur last week.
And we did have a massage up there. Yes, we did. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
We've then got 6 hours later because we see the life form eating through the actual hull. Hollister is suffering from yellow fever. And he's got some hot lemon coming to it, and Rimmer seems to be apparently on some sort of probation, and he tries to sneak in a pardon for him to get out of what he's been going through.
A what?
Pardon.
Oh, I thought you said hard on.
No, oh my God, Matt, help me.
This is why I shouldn't drink on my podcast.
Because Rimmer wants to be an officer, and he says "sir" a lot. So, never going to be captain, sir. You know, it's like, just not officer material, sir. You know, so that happens. And then we've got Talia that comes in, that's been resurrected by the nanobots. This is something I mentioned last week. Talia got resurrected by the nanobots. Why did the nanobots do that?
I don't know either, because, like, they brought back Red Dwarf based on... Was it the original plans? So how the hell did they get the plans for the SS Hermes?
Yeah.
Who else and what else have they brought back?
We never established whether or not they brought back Frankenstein.
Yeah.
No kitty. And I like cats. I would like there to have been a cat. Because cat. I know I'm being flippant, but it does feel like it could have just been that smidge tighter when it came to what the nanobots did.
Yeah, I mean, I think this episode is one of those ones that bear brunt of, like, the constraints that they were under for the whole series. You know, the cost constraints, the fact they're having to extend episodes, that there's, like, a lot of, like, sketchiness in regards to, like, sort of a lot of these episodes. It feels like a sketch show in some ways. You know, it's like moments in time rather than actually a full narrative, isn't it? There's a lot of that going on in this series.
I feel like they knew that they had to get, instead of 12 episodes, they needed to get 16 episodes for the syndication thing. And
both Series 7 and Series 8 suffer from it not being quite as tight as it could have been. Series 7 could have shared a couple of their weaker episodes, and Series 8 could have just put in a couple of good episodes rather than elongating, well, Pete and Back in the Red. Back in the Red 1 and 2 would have probably been really good. Pete on its own would have probably been really good. But they could have done with 2 more episodes for that. And you understand it because of this fucking syndication thing, which as a British person, I don't really understand. But I also understand that it's necessary for American shit. I should probably get Vink and Devon back on to explain that shit.
I've found it fascinating. I know we're going off a tangent here. I always found that fascinating because they're saying that 52 episodes would have got a syndication, but in American TV, it's 100 episodes.
I know, right? And that's why I need to talk to American people again.
But anyway, let's move on because we do have to, tighten this up a bit ourselves because we're not being exactly tight at the moment, are we?
Yeah.
No. So I think the thing for me, again, going back to what you're saying about the syndication stuff and what would happen nowadays is that you'd have the freedom to sort of go, is Pete an hour and a half? Is Pete Back in the Red a 3-parter? No, it isn't. Is it about an hour and 10 minutes? Probably. Would they have been able to do that nowadays? Yes. You know what I mean? So it would have been a lot tighter and it would have been almost like The Promised Land will be. It'll be that you get to do that kind of thing. But syndication is exactly what you're talking about. It's that it needs to get to that point. And it's gets degraded because of that, because it's got to fit so many things. We talked about Archie last week, meaning to be in Cassandra originally. We had to be shifted around. And that's the thing about saying about the sketchiness, the sketch showness of it, that actually that story element, we could just move that and make a few little adjustments and it can fit in that episode quite easily because it's more of a sketch show. And I think that's what Series 8 suffers with. Anyway, so he wants to be an officer. Okay. And we're talking about that part of it. And Rimmer notices that obviously Talia comes in and makes assumptions. And he's making assumptions that is interesting because you think about the Back in the Red, where he's Hollis is trying to get the sexual magnetism stuff, and Rimmer mentions about his wife.
Yeah, it does kind of darken Hollister in a way that I wasn't expecting.
I mean, like the gag at the start of Pete Part 1 was basically, what was it? Ackerman with the chief of science's wife or something, like casually. I was like, oh yeah, Ackerman was.
Is that a veiled thing about the army or the navy and stuff? Maybe.
Then again, maybe the future of in the Red Dwarf universe, there's a lot more polygamy. Maybe we shouldn't be so hard to. Maybe we shouldn't be so harsh to judge.
Well, Rimmer is.
I do think it's a very in-character Rimmer joke when he says, "Do you want me to turn your photo of your wife away, sir?" Which I think is a funny Rimmer line to have. I think, and rather than which I think is like you probably wouldn't get away with another character saying that.
No, I mean, and I think that the way that this one's framed is not really on Hollister because it is his sister, as in his spiritual sister, and it's Rimmer doesn't know that, so Rimmer's like just going in and making assumptions and the wrong assumptions. But I think what my point was that in the earlier parts of this series, it's not even necessarily because I think you can't really akin this to like sort of continuity. It's a kind of continuity thing that Hollis has been just used as a pawn for whatever the show needs it to do at that moment, rather than actually being a character himself.
Yes, and I think you're absolutely right. And that McDonald, despite all those unfortunate issues, is still a fucking revelation in the entire series. But what it does, this joke isn't necessarily anything to do with the character of Hollister. It's to do with the heteronorm of 1999. And the heteronorm of 1999 is not what we have now. We have people being honest with each other about how they treat their relationship. Nothing to do with hetero, homo, or any other O when it comes to your relationships. I like to define exactly what my relationships are because I'm a little bit older, but I know people who like have these very kind of open and or poly and or whatever relationships, and they are so much more clued up than me, even though they're younger than me. And I don't think we can judge this. It's a cheap joke. It's a cheap joke about cheating on your partner. And you could still have a cheap joke about cheating on your partner right now.
But then again, thinking about it, I'm pretty sure that Hollister's been a widower for 3 million years.
Well, yeah, there is that, I suppose, yeah.
yeah. So technically Hollister's wife's been dead for about 3 million years. So
that is actually, yeah, that's canon. Yeah, that makes more, yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Hollister knows his wife is dead, so he's not actually cheating on it. Good point, well made. I hadn't thought about that.
Move on.
So widower, yeah.
Yeah, widower, perfect. Thank you, Matt, for working that out for us.
Thank you, Matt, for stopping my earnest bollocks about modern relationships. Cheers.
My next point is going to Chocolate Abduction on 341, which is the machine, which we talked about briefly because the machine gets his own way back in the alternative edit. But
you know who it is, right?
No.
You know who
Tony
plays? Yeah, it's Tony Slattery.
Is it? Oh,
yeah.
I think I knew that from years back. I would have known that years ago. I'd completely forgot about that.
It's so nice to see Tony Slattery back one more time. He is like the fifth dwarfer, isn't he?
And what I like the way they do the sound design for it is that they really clip the audio when he goes, "Ah!" and it kind of really kind of rips the thing. Have we had? I'm just trying to think. I might be misremembering something. Have we had other than Talkie Toaster? Have we had any more dispensers like this?
We've never had anything that takes cash before.
Because the Topic Bar body swap, actually, strangely enough, that didn't have. It just had a self-destruct. It didn't have a personality, did it?
No. But the other, there's a weird sentience with machines. Obviously, we've got the scutters, and I don't feel like Today's Fish's Trout a la Creme had a personality or anything like that. But this really clearly, obviously, does. But I think what I noted the most was, when did it become coin-op? Was that the original design of Red Dwarf, that it was coin-op? Because we've seen that you don't need to ask you ask for free and you get what you want. Today's fish is trout a la creme. Today's fish is trout a la creme. Today's fish is trout a la creme.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this is coin-op, and the whole premise of the episode is the revenge because he didn't pay. So are we going to go with this was the original design of Red Dwarf is the reason why? Or is it just another laziness? Even though they've not been lazy when it comes to referencing previous episodes. Oh, my head's fucked and I'm drunk.
The reason why I say about the dispenser is that becomes a bit of a reoccurring theme in shows moving forward, that we do get dispensers that actually have personality. So like your Talkie Toasters up to before, and this one here, it's something that will play out, which is interesting that they have that. And it's just and that we mentioned earlier about the Star Trek thing, that we don't often talk about Star Wars, but the dispensers are the Star Wars, aren't they? They're the droids. You know what I mean? So
I would have preferred the SAS to have been from Talkie Toaster rather than this vending machine, because up to this point in Red Dwarf, vending machines have been completely and utterly emotionless. Like I say, today's fish is trout a la creme, enjoy your meal. Today's fish is trout a la creme, enjoy your meal. Today's fish, etc. I think Talkie Toaster would have been better as an antagonist in this episode.
So here's my question to Matt, and obviously we'll be careful about what we say, but the thing is, like, so in a previous episode, I've talked about the argument, like, what they've had is they've had characters available to them and they've used them too much. They've, like the Ackerman thing and all that type of thing, that they've had the toys and ran away with it. I think for me, I don't know what you think, Matt, but for me, having a dispenser has that ability to still have characters play off each other, like a talkie toaster, like this dispenser, but so having your cake and eating it, but it's like still within the realms of like having an extra character around if you needed it, rather than actually having the mass of people that we've got in Series 8.
Yeah, because I think with that, I think it's kind of like you've got an ensemble, but it's not ones that can kind of dictate or take over the narrative like we've seen with Series 8. So like you have to kind of serve these different characters and flesh out these. You've got kind of aspects of the ship that have got like artificial intelligence, just to provide some kind of like quirk that you probably won't be able to get in any other kind of sitcom. So I quite like that kind of world building aspect to it. And again, it gives them more chances to interact with other characters that aren't just the four of them. And again, it's like an artificial intelligence they can interact to, which is basically in place of Holly. So if they can't get Holly or a character like that, they can just refer to having the artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I suppose the Holly thing's an interesting dynamic on it, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's kind of where you fill in that Holly gap, I suppose.
Mm.
Yeah, no, you're right there, I think. And it has mixed results, and I'm sure that we'll get to them eventually when we do have other dispensers that do that. But he has got a vendetta, and we've seen the alternative ending. And in the next, obviously in this version, the vendetta is the fact that he hasn't been paid. So at least that they kind of match those two up together, and it has an emotional payoff at the end. If you move into the cat situation, the cat's like putting all the rock albums. It's a weak joke. I don't know what you think, but it's a weak joke.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't have anything to add, but I'd agree.
And then that leads us to the wrong time of the month.
Oh, don't. Fucking men writing jokes about periods. Just don't do it. Just stop it.
I loved it.
You can't... really?
Yes.
Yeah, I the joke is on kind of like Crichton rather than the jokes on periods. So it's the prank that Lister plays on Crichton, which feels like a more Lister thing to do rather than trying to go against authority from the start of Pete. This is like kind of like Lister having a bit of fun.
Maybe I'm being
expense.
Oversensitive, but I don't particularly want straight people to write gags about gay people. And therefore, in an empathic kind of way, I kind of don't want men to write jokes about periods.
But my other half loves this joke.
That's good.
She really does love it. She thinks it's brilliant.
And maybe, like I say, maybe I'm being a bit oversensitive. I don't want straight people to write gay jokes, but I'm glad that your partner's okay with men writing stuff.
But I also think it's the humility of Crichton's situation. It's not about it's about him not understanding it.
I'm not saying it's not funny, because it is.
Yeah.
But I just had a bit of an alarm bell, in as much as maybe it should be women writing these jokes rather than men.
But then I think the joke also has a kind of plot relevance to it, because it leads to the kind of Hooch and Ackerman later on.
Also, yeah, but also, is it not the fact that the whole point is because men don't understand it?
Yeah.
That's not the whole point. So a woman writing it wouldn't get why we get awkward about it.
Oh yeah, I'm not doing a massive Mark rant on it. I'm just, yeah. And
I'm seeing it from the way that they're saying it, is that Crichton doesn't like fully understand the whole remit of it. Like sort of you got a massive like blind spot to it all, and yes, Lister on the Lister side, there's an argument on that side of it, but the awkwardness and dealing with that situation month on that time of month is difficult.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So, and it's that awkwardness of actually dealing with that issue.
It's also I think example, like it's like the development of the Kachansky and Crichton relationship. I mean, we've not really had a lot of that in this series, and like considering the fact that like Crichton kind of wants to help, or misunderstands it and kind of wants to be supportive and help. if you compare Crichton to Series 7, like he's trying to. He doesn't understand it, and he thinks he's helping. He thinks he's being supportive.
There's almost a solidarity rather than a rivalry when it comes to Kachansky and Crichton in this.
Yeah, and I tell you what, there's a poignant moment which is really interesting in that if you think back to Series 7, you've got Crichton saying you're lying. Right? But in this episode, he says exactly the same, but it's a different context. Because he's saying that's what I'm getting at there. It's like he's saying he was lying and he feels bad for Kachansky, whereas at the beginning of Series 7, wanted to get rid of her. He was more worried about him, and he's come to accept it as well.
And this is the thing about Series 8, isn't it? There's some really clever, intelligent, thoughtful writing. There is also some incredibly crude and awful misogynistic bullshit. And I find that really frustrating because I love this. I love Red Dwarf. I wouldn't have done over 110 episodes on a Red Dwarf fucking podcast if I didn't love it. But Series 8 is the most frustrating thing in all of the time that I have done this over the last 2.5 years. I just want to scream. Some of it is so good, so perfect, so well referenced, so respectful to the last 7 series. And some of it is the worst dog shit I've had to fucking endure in my lifetime. And Series 8 is a phenomenon. It shouldn't make me feel like this. It's incredible that it does.
What I will say, though, and it gets me every time with it, is his realization. And he goes, this isn't the way to enjoy any points the word, because he realizes, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that word. It says, oh, is the banner wrong? It's like, oh, Crichton, oh, I feel so sorry for you. You know what I mean? We've all, well, most of us have gone through that. You know what I mean? It's like we've all had that like foot in the step moment. It's like, oh my God, it's like, no, that's not good. We're not doing well here.
Exactly. Red Dwarf is about empathy. There's a lot of empathy in Red Dwarf, and the cringy, I tried so hard, but I made it a horrible mess thing. Everybody understands that. And it is actually well written. I just don't like that it's written by a man. And maybe I'm just being a bit oversensitive, a little bit too woke, fucking queer. Let's all support our women, sisters, yada, yada, fucking yada. I just kind of want this to have been written by a woman. I don't think it's bad, but I kind of want it to have been written by a woman.
I still don't see that argument, because it's not about the woman; it's about the man.
Yeah, I'm with
It's not about the woman. I don't see that argument, Mark.
It's the joke's on Lister in the end.
I get it, mate, and I think I'm probably being oversensitive, and I have been, and we've talked about this before, that there is so much nasty, unforgivable shit in Series 8, way more than the rest of Red Dwarf, that I am oversensitive about this, and I don't mind admitting that, and maybe you're right.
I'd say, I think it's just, for me, it's a balance. It's more on Crichton being led down the path and not, and trying to understand it. I mean, if we move on to more of the one, like, which is kind of like an interesting joke in itself, with pouring that blue stuff over, which is just a joke against the
That was good.
Which I went to like pour blue stuff over stuff. It's like, oh my god, no.
I've got only one response to that gag, and it may overload my microphone. But what I'm going to say is, what?
It has.
For you.
It did.
Do you remember that?
I heard none of that. We heard none of that. It completely blew the microphone.
I think your microphone's broken, but
Right, I'm going to move backwards.
No. It must be
too
really loud.
I'll do it quiet. Why by the phone for you.
That is really sinister.
yeah. But it leads.
Wow, body form for you.
But everybody knows about the fucking blue shit because of that advert, and it's the BBC. They couldn't say "Wow, by the phone" because it's the BBC.
But then,
By the phone for you.
but I do think one of the good things I think with this as well is that it does lead to like the next scene, which is one of my favourite scenes of the episode.
Yeah, the cell inspection.
Yes.
Okay, so the fact that Holly, it's just brilliant. Keep it under your hat, guys. Cell inspection in 10 minutes. And then 20 seconds later, cell inspection in 10 minutes. It's like, oh my God, that is so funny. That is so funny.
This is a consistent about Series 8 of Red Dwarf, is that all the Holly gags, without exception, are fucking brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Norman Lover
Almost.
is a fucking whiny piece of shit. He had the best when it came to Series 8 of Red Dwarf. No dodgy shit and lots of very, very funny. And he consistently, up to this day, fucking whines. And it's like, chill. You were cool. You were funny. Yeah. And it doesn't matter that you didn't have very much screen time.
So he does have, he has found in the prison logs as well something that'll make your hair stand on end. Well, maybe not mine and yours, Mark, but it's Brew Cream, it's called. It's just
brilliant. That's a good gag.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then this one, which keeps going around in my mind, and we've mentioned him a couple of times. Tony, we just need to mention that Joel's mentioned in this, and Tony will be watching it. He'll probably watch this episode just for that alone, because it's a Joel fight, which I don't think lands that well. You know, that joke with it's like, oh, it's the video case hit me. I'm not sure that works really that well.
Mm.
It's a bit obscure, isn't it?
It is a bit obscure.
Yeah.
It's the first time really that I think this season where we've had like a reference like that. I mean, and yes, we have a QPR, but we haven't really had like a Beardsley or I want to say Glenn Miller, but I don't think Glenn Miller was mentioned. But someone like that, you know, someone like an old school musician or something like that that's been mentioned. But like the film Jewel, which I know is a Spielberg film, so you know it's, a lot of people will know it, but it is an obscure one, really, for anyone.
It's not E.T., is it? E.T. is timeless, whereas Jewel is not.
Are we saying rumours like Tony?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. But yeah, we get to Baxter's Hooch. So, Matt, I'm assuming you want to talk about Baxter's Hooch, do you?
Yeah, I think it's on the fact, like, but I think it's, so the letter from Crichton saying, oh yeah, we've hidden Baxter's Hooch in your thing, and like the cell inspection, so they end up having to drink the whole of the damn thing, and the resultant kind of drunken acting from Chris Barry and Craig Charles, I think, is hilarious.
I've put in my notes, Craig Charles cell from Hooch, and then I drew a love heart. And then my next note was Chris Barry's cell from Hooch, and then I drew a love heart. I'm not got anything to add for that.
Yeah. But it's the reaction when when Ackerman comes in, and then he's just like, "You're drunk." He goes, "No."
Me sir?
No.
We've all tried to pretend to not be drunk to someone in authority, and it never fucking works. And this scene does it perfectly.
It's quite rare that I'm able to drop Quasbud Dwarf. My Quasbud Dwarf's usually from different shows, but the sorry, we just got Mark just finishing off his wine on the camera. Wine. But like it's the few times where like when I've been in conversations with like kind of like drunk people over drunk people, and like the amount of times I've tried to say, "Who fancies a kebab?" and no one's understood the fucking reference.
You didn't do that with me back when we were in Birmingham or Wolseley or whatever it's called.
I think it's too busy distracted by drum and bass. So, but to be fair, I was drinking that night as well. So
I need to be drunk to enjoy drum and bass.
Oh, I don't enjoy drum and bass. It was the only thing available, Mark. That's the reason why
I do enjoy drum and bass, but I'd rather be listening to like not drum and bass.
I mean, what I particularly like, Matt, is the physical comedy in this, because it's like you say with the drunk scene, it's like there's a moment where like Lister falls off his chair. There's like Rimmer kind of jumps up and gets back down again. And then it's the fall on the bunk, and Rimmer falls over, and as you say, it goes back to that point with Lister and drunk sir. No, sir, no.
And he just starts shaking his head and stuff, and just like kind of collapses on Ackerman.
Yeah, and the way that Ackerman says "super suck."
Yes.
It's just like, and he's just this desire, like this thing in his eye, just kind of like, I'm going to get these back. These have done things to me over the last couple of episodes.
Yeah.
This is me going back to them.
The payback type thing. Yeah.
In the meantime, we're finding out that because it's Baxter's hooch, that Kat and the rest of the crew find out that actually Baxter's going to be after them because they've stolen their hooch and stuff. So they decide they're going to have to escape. So, what in a random state of affairs, for some reason, Kachansky wears a pan on her head, and Crichton has blue tack all over him,
like measles or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like blue tack. It doesn't look like, it's obviously just stuff that you stick on. But the fact that it's like, how does that even work for a start off? The fact that she's got a pan on her head. Why would people not wonder about that? And it goes back to that slapstick comedy again that we were talking about before.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be like it's got a pan stuck in her head and she has to get it removed or something, but it doesn't look like it's stuck.
No.
But surely the whole point is that Crichton can't get ill because he's a mechanoid, and it's supposed to be a lol? Well, that's what I assumed.
Yeah.
I liked it because of that, but you're saying you don't like it because it didn't feel real? The whole point is it wasn't supposed to feel real.
Oh, no, I'm fine. I'm just being like a little bit like devil's advocate with it, because it's kind of like, it looks like blue tack for a start off.
I think it's supposed to look like blue tack.
Oh, yeah, it's funny. That's the whole point why it's funny. I'm not having a go at it. You know what I mean? It's actually quite funny. But what I particularly like, and this is the best thing, right? Could Danny John Jules look any more beautiful than he does?
No. No, he can't.
Oh, it's just, he tries to get himself, like, and he does his whole Popeye kind of like reaction where he's kind of like doing this with his chin, going, total like Robin Williams in Popeye, and trying to get himself hospitalized. But the fact that doesn't work, and he's like, I want to be a bitch, B-I-H, which is great. And then that nurse's outfit, it does something like it.
So my one line of notes that I've made on this is, I don't know if you can see that from there.
No.
Basically, my only like is from the casting of the prisoner that Kat is trying to get punched. All I've got is, oh my god, it's Serge from Family Affairs.
Is that a thing I should recognise?
Yeah, same here.
It's the soap from Channel 5. So when Channel 5 first started, it had a long-going soap which featured a family, and it was called Family Affairs. One of the characters was...
Meanwhile, me and Mark are just looking going, are we meant to be laughing here?
The biggest...
Because we have no idea what he's talking about.
I think the biggest kind of thing, in its first like few months, one of the characters was a character called Tim. He was played by an actor called, oh god, what's his name?
I don't know.
Idris Elba. I don't know if he ever did anything.
I've heard of Idris Elba.
Yeah, I think Idris Elba wants to kind of forget he ever did Family Affairs.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, but the actor...
We're going to do an Idris Elba Family Affairs podcast.
I genuinely thought that Idris Elba's acting debut was Ultraviolet, Ultraviolet is fucking brilliant, by the way.
Family Affairs started in '97. That's what, because it was basically whenever it was the first night Channel 5 was there. Channel 5 came out.
Ultraviolet. There you go.
What year was that? Was that in '98?
Normal selling price $24.99. MVC cardholders price $22.99.
MVC.
Ultraviolet.
But yeah, anyway, so
DVDs fell out.
Yeah, so Surge from Family Affairs.
Do you know what it says on here? This is interesting. A dark, stylish vampire thriller for the X-Files generation.
It was 1998 for Idris Elba in Ultraviolet.
So it's Family Affairs does predate Ultraviolet then, but it wasn't in it for long. But like, yeah,
Ultraviolet was fucking sublime.
But yeah, besides that was that Surge from Family Affairs. I just thought
I'm
that's the only announcement
lost. What are we doing? What are we talking about?
You know
Cats?
what? I bet you if Carl was here, Carl would understand exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah.
Honestly, how does he? Right, I don't understand him. He's a walking encyclopedia on TV shows. What's that about?
Right, Carl and I recorded 2 episodes of a podcast called Did You Ever Watch? About obscure television programs on Ultraviolet, and I have them somewhere. I cannot be asked to do anything with them. Carl got really upset that we cut it, and
putting Carl on advert on a podcast called Did You Ever Watch? It's quite a short podcast because you just say yes.
Yes.
In it.
Yeah.
You don't think he's ever done anything other than that?
Anyway.
Yes. So wearing the nurse's outfit. Doesn't want to be there before 5 p.m. because he's doing the bed bath time.
Right, can we go back a little bit? The scene where they're comparing their scars. I wanted to ask you both, what is your biggest scar?
Probably there.
This is an audio fucking medium. You can't.
I know.
Point.
I'm showing you, and then I'm going to explain.
Good.
On my right hand, opposite the thumb, so on the wrist, I've got a scar that goes down the side of it because basically what happened is, do you remember things like bonbons and cola pips and all the boiled sweets that you would get?
Yes,
and
because I'm over 40.
Yeah, and there'd be in like sort of fairly big jar that you would go into the shop and you'd like sort of unscrew the top and you pour the things in, and then you get like a quarter of like bonbons, for example. And I was working in the shop, and there was this like fudge stuff that you could get. I can't remember what it's called now, but there was this fudge stuff, and I unscrewed the top of it, and I started to pour it out, but it had all congealed together, so it was all quite stuck. So I had this clever idea of getting a Stanley knife and tried to cut the top of it off.
Why did you have a Stanley knife?
I was the shop. I was not the shop owner. I was the shop assistant at this point.
No.
So I'm thinking to myself, how can I get this fudge out? So I thought, right, I'm going to use a Stanley knife. So I started to cut into the actual fudge bottle kind of thing, or the container, and it slipped, and I stabbed myself with the Stanley knife right in the corner of my wrist.
That's not wise.
Yeah, no. So right in. So I went to hospital. I was like this, with my arms up in the air, holding it down like that, and then that's basically it. I think that's probably that. Or the other one, it's probably bigger, but I didn't go to hospital for that one, ironically. I was on stage. I was playing with my band. I'd had quite a few to drink. I had quite a lot to drink. And during the second set, or just before I went on stage for the second set, it was like, get a couple of drinks in, get them on stage, go back to the bar, get another one, go on stage. And I'd missed the front of the stage, and I'd caught on a nail right across my front of my shin. And the shin sliced the front of the shin off. And I then did the gig. And when I finished, have you ever seen, I know Matt has, I'm not sure about you. Have you ever seen the Alan Partridge episode where he puts his foot on a spike?
Yes.
It was like that.
But
the blood had like congealed in my shoe because it was falling down into my shoe for the entire 45 minutes of the set.
That's not good.
Yeah, so that's probably my biggest scars on my shin, actually, rather than my wrist.
What
That's
about you?
mine.
What about you, Matt?
I don't have any.
You have literally no scars.
What?
What? I don't know whether to be impressed or horrified.
I think he's proud of it.
I've got two. One of them is so I was trying to impress this boy, and you can tell how drunk I am by how many spins I do on the dance floor. The more spins, the drunkerer I am. And I was doing a lot of spins. And I did this spin in front of this boy, and I lost my footing. And had I not been drunk, I would have definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, broken my neck. I chin dove off the dance floor and just like, I just smacked my chin off the floor, and I got up and I carried on dancing. And a friend of mine was like, Mark, you probably should do something about the fact that you're pissing blood from your chin. I had no clue. I was so drunk that I didn't feel the pain, but I looked in the mirror in the bogs. I basically had a second mouth on my chin. And this is the reason why I never wet shave anymore, because I can't. If I wet shave, I reopen the gigantic scar that's kind of across the bottom of my chin from like, it's kind of like the top of my mouth down to the center of my, what's that bit that bird from EastEnders doesn't have?
Cleft.
Yes.
Is it a cleft?
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the top left of my chin down to the cleft of my nose, there's a gigantic scar. I can't use razors because it reopens the scar, which is why I'll always have stubble. And it didn't hurt. I didn't know. And I was trying to pull this guy with a fucking gash, a fucking vagina on the bottom of my mouth.
That's taking it a bit too far, isn't it?
I didn't know. I just got up and carried on trying to cop off with this boy. And I got this fucking gaping vag, pissing blood. And I was like, hey, how you doing?
Obviously, they try to escape. So we're at the point where they're trying to escape. And then they see the chameleonic microbe issue. And they say they can't go back. And the thing is that they talk about empathy, like he talks about before, that they can't leave Red Dwarf like it is. So they go back and tell him. Now, unfortunately, that means there's not enough lifeboats and they're not on them. So they're going to have to solve this problem themselves. So the idea comes from Kachansky to look into the mirror universe. And this is the first time I think we've ever had a chance where they just go, actually, we can do this. I've never ever heard them do this before, I don't think. I can't remember them ever just going, oh, by the way, we can do it. It's always been a matter of course. They found a rip or they've done this, I've done that. You know, even finding Kachansky was a circumstance. This is Kachansky's going, now we can put a rip in the universe and we can go to this mirror universe, which I find fascinating in itself because it's a bit of a contrivance in some ways, but at the same time, it's kind of like, all right, can you flow with it?
I'm going to assume it's not like traversing the universe isn't as like easy as it's like apparently made out, because like else she could have just gone back to her own.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. The whole point of Series 7 was that it was really fucking hard to get her back to her own universe. And then, click your fingers, start of Series 8, she didn't care anymore.
I think the show's forgotten her origin story.
Mm.
It's like she is actually, because Kachansky, because I think like they say, oh yeah, with Navigation Officer Kachansky, oh, by the way, why aren't you Scottish? Like
I said it in the last episode. They get so many fun, cool references to stuff from previous series of Red Dwarf, but then they forget about the recent shit. And this is an absolute... It just doesn't in any way, shape or form make sense that Kachansky just doesn't care anymore. as much as she has a thing for our Dave Lister, her Dave Lister was frankly better. And there's no reference in all of Series 8 whatsoever to her trying to get back to her reality.
Yeah, it goes back. It's kind of a weird thing because it's kind of like a mixture between Star Trek: The Next Generation or X-Files, maybe not as much, but where it's like it will set and repeat, it will reset and repeat. But Red Dwarf's got this bit of like, it's got continuity, but then it doesn't when it doesn't want to, and it does when it does. You know what I mean? It kind of like just plays with stuff around. And it's the nature of its time that you do have Star Trek Next Generation where it'll have one episode who someone goes through massive trauma, and the next episode they're having some sort of fun comedy kind of aspect to it. You know what I mean? It has that thing. But with Red Dwarf, it's really bizarre because it's a mixture of two. It's kind of like, all right, we'll have their storyline. We want to feed back to the way that Rimmer used to be, but we're going to forget that the way that Kachansky was with the universe and stuff like that. So he needs to get back to that and whatever. There's a lot of like
also Crikey TV.
Anyway, so at last things are looking up because he's got the cesium francolithic mixi-allobidium. It's
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Rixie Dixie Doxy Dexydroxide. Cesium francolithic mixi-allobidium Rixie Dixie Doxy Dexydroxide. And he goes back, comes out of it, and it's not what he thinks it is. And then we get the stuff like that. But I just want to briefly, we've talked about the ending, so I just want to briefly talk about the flipping of the mirror in the mirror universe, because everything is flipped. That whether or not obviously the film has physically been flipped, because you can see it on his badge that Red Dwarf's backwards. You can see when he comes in, the set is the other way around, but everything's reversed. So apparently the genitals are not quite there.
Yeah, there's because Rimmer looks down and goes like, checks himself, and it's
which is a fantastic reference to Back to Reality, where he has a massive cock.
Yeah. And obviously the woman as well, we talk about the film at the top of the hour, the woman is actually holding the monster as well as a backwards thing. And I think there was some other examples which we won't go into now, but you can definitely find out that there's things they wanted to do which were opposites and stuff like that, which they never got round to doing.
I would have loved it if he'd gone through the mirror and it would have been the same actor who played the female version of Rimmer going through the mirror. That would have been so good and so clever and so referential and similar to what they've been doing with like heavy references to previous series. They didn't do that, which is unfortunate, but I genuinely think that would have been pretty fucking amazing, actually.
I think the main thing was mainly to flip the conversation that he had with Hollister, and the difference in, but do the Rimmer way of him doing it, whereas so for example, you got a Hollister saying, "Oh, can I be an officer one day?" and whereas like Hollister kind of just dismissed him and didn't really say anything. Rimmer was like, "No, he can't. No."
Yeah.
Oh, you're absolutely right. But wouldn't it have been fucking cool?
Possibly, but it wouldn't have fitted in with the kind of the theme he wanted to get through in terms of, or pay off that scene at the start of the episode with Hollister and Rimmer, because I think it is a case of just showing that, Rimmer is kind of like still a smeghead.
Yeah, and you've got to look at Kat and Kachansky, because Kat's really, really intelligent, and Kachansky, they're playing as a bimbo, which, like, for our Kachansky is like, she's not a bimbo, she's a science officer, she's really intelligent.
True.
She knows how to change universes, you know what I mean? So that's kind of what they were playing, because she's playing like, it's like a redhead wig, isn't it? Rather than a blonde wig. It's like so which is good. It didn't go down the blonde route. They just played her as a bimbo as a redhead. So they did do that aspect of it as well. So
True.
So there's an element of that.
I would just really like to have seen the return of Arlene Rimmer. They've been really kind of referential over Series 8, so much more than 5, 6, and 7, that I think it would have fitted. Whilst you're right, I think it would have fitted if they'd have changed it in a different way.
Any commentary for you, Mark? Were you listening to the commentary? Have you got anything to mention?
Yes. So the commentary is actually really interesting on this episode. So we established last week that it was around the time that Christopher Eccleston had been cast as Doctor Who. And whilst doing the commentary, they expected within the next month to be doing a Red Dwarf movie.
Next month?
So
Okay.
around 2004, I think.
Okay.
They were expecting a Red Dwarf movie, which, when you think about it, this was in 1999, and they were doing it 5 years later. They got Chloe Annett back, and she was basically done. That's kind of cool. And they were expecting to do a movie. Maybe that movie would have had Chloe Annett, because she wasn't totally done at that point. She's gone. She's so gone. She did like a fucking cameo in Back to Earth, but she just doesn't want to act anymore. She has a different life. But the movie would have had Chloe Annett in, and I want that. I want her. She's brilliant.
I think it's one of the more better episodes of the series. I think of series 8. There's again a lot of it. A lot of the. I think the story's slightly more cohesive than perhaps previous episodes have been. Yeah, I'm not gonna repeat the whole thing about the character art, but yeah, I think it's an episode that's kind of full of nice, kind of like fun bits and pieces, some good moments. I still find the Who Fancies a Kebab bit hilarious. And I think, as we said at the top of this episode, I think, as Mark said, that I think the kind of dramatic ending, I think, kind of makes it more memorable.
Adagio for strings, by the way, which I should have mentioned. Adagio for strings, for me, I remember listening to this and I became absolutely obsessed with that tune. That I had to seek it out, and whenever I heard it in like a hotel bar or whatever it was, I'd be like, no, I'm staying, I'm listening to this. And it was because of this episode.
Oh, it's a great track. It's beautiful.
I think this is one of the better episodes of the series, of series 8. In terms of like the whole kind of narrative of the show, in terms of not in universe, but around the production and the writing of it, I still think it's quite an important kind of linchpin in perhaps in this, like the overall discussion of the quality of the show as well, and the direction it starts to take. So I think it's an important episode to kind of take note of, because I've got a feeling, because I'm going to be referring back to this episode a few times as we go on through the series. So I think it's quite an important episode in that regard as well, and as well as it being the last ever BBC episode. So,
yeah.
Oh, it's massively significant in that respect.
Yeah,
absolutely is. And so, okay then. I think, Mark, the only thing that need to ask in that regard, because I did have the fact it is the final BBC episode. We're moving into the Dave era. It's a monumental moment. You mentioned you have seen Back to Earth originally, but I think you maybe said you've seen it once.
I watched it once at the time, and I haven't watched it since.
As a final thing for us moving out of this era and going into the Dave era, what are you looking forward to? How are you envisaging like the next era of Shipwrecked and Comatose? I think as us two as a podcast, the main hosts and the main driving force with this, how do you think we're gonna fare?
I think it's fascinating. We've done this for 3 years now, and it's been great kind of sharing the lead with you. But that's not what it's going to be going forward, because I can't share the lead because I don't know any of the episodes anymore. I've watched Back to Earth once and didn't like it at the time. I may change my opinion of it, but at the time I was like, fucking hell, this is just... It was bizarre to me that Back to Earth had the real actors from Red Dwarf, because it felt like fan fiction. And I really hope that Dave era isn't fan fiction in my head, because I want to love Red Dwarf, because series 1 to 6 are just the best television of my youth. And there is a real nostalgia in doing this podcast. Series 7, again, I watched quite often, but Series 8 I hardly touched. It wasn't for my new current fucking woke bollocks about, oh Christ, everything about Series 8 is problematic. It was just because I was older and I was at uni and I was drinking and I was going to say I was drinking and studying, but I was drinking. And everything post that is almost new to me. But the whole premise of our podcast, from the very start of you and me talking on the Holy Shit Mark's board, let's talk about fucking anything podcast during COVID, I didn't know you. And I was like, you're on my network. Let's talk about something. What do you want to pick? You chose Red Dwarf. And then suddenly this fucking happened. Neither of us could have predicted that. We were both fucking bored during COVID. I worked in the wedding industry and you worked at a cinema. We were both bored as fuck. And you were there, who happened to be on the same podcast network as me. And I was like, let's talk about something. What do you want to talk about? Red Dwarf. And we chatted for 20 minutes. And then you and I stopped recording. And I was like, yada, 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 chat, chat, chat. An hour, 2 hours later, we'd just been chatting. And I was like, do you want to do a podcast about Red Dwarf? And you said yes. And you shouldn't have done, because it gave us a hell of a lot of workload for both of us. And I'm glad you did. But you're right. This whole journey is a completely and utterly different fucking tack as of...
Well, this episode.
Yeah.
Now.
Basically, that's it now. That's
Right
it now.
now.
Yeah.
And that's fucking interesting, and that's fucking cool. We have done this for 2.5 years, almost accidentally. I look at the viewing figures of Shipwrecked and Comatose, and it blows my mind. I have Z-list fame as a wrestling ring announcer, but this feels so much more real and so much more interesting and so much more like I've earned it, because you and I made this a thing. Whereas as a wrestling ring announcer, I just turn up and tell people what the name of that wrestling guy is. Whereas you and I made this accidentally during a fucking international pandemic. I'll always be blown away by how many people listen to this.
So does this mean that we're leaving We Made This and going to get picked up by Dave?
Maybe.
I think for me I think it's right that we have all 5 of us on the next one.
I agree.
Because it's like it is a brand new era. There's out of 5 of us, 3 of us have seen all the Dave stuff. I think is that right?
Yeah, I think Carl's seen it. Seen it.
So the dynamic would change that way.
It's Kurt, Matt, and Carl that have seen the Dave era. Only me and Colin haven't seen any Dave stuff.
I think Colin said has Colin seen Back to Earth? I can't remember if he has or not.
I've seen Back to Earth. I don't know if Colin has.
We're talking from 10 onwards, aren't we? But from, I think it's right that we do Back to Earth together, because at the time, even me, I mean, as someone who watches Red Dwarf on a regular, it's my bedtime TV. I flick it on. What do I watch? Episode 4 from season 4, or whatever it may well be. Back to Earth 1 isn't available anywhere for a start off, so you've got to physically get the DVD copy of it to actually watch it. Now, obviously, there's other ways of doing this, which I have done, and now I've got it available digitally for me if I wanted to watch it. But it's not available at a flick of a switch. It's not available on Amazon. It's not available on UK TV. It's not available to pressing a button and saying, "Play Red Dwarf, please." So I watched this, like I said at the top a few weeks back, that I watched this a few days ago, and I had no idea what I watched it and I was like, oh my God, did that happen? I didn't realize that happened. You know what I mean? So even I'm like sort of forgetting Red Dwarf.
I've not watched
Back to
it
Earth
since the original broadcast, and all I remember is that it wasn't very good, and they went to Coronation Street. I'm coming into it new again.
What I find fascinating, and I'm the same. We're all the same on this, I think. What I find fascinating, and we'll talk about this next time. This is for us to talk about next time because it is bedtime. That it kickstarted the Dave era. Without Back to Earth, we would not have Red Dwarf 10, we would not have Red Dwarf 11, and we would not have Red Dwarf 12. So, irrespective of how good or bad it is really important.
I'm so excited about the next era of Shipwrecked and Comatose because we've done this for longer. I don't know.
But Mark, if I just let me interject for a second, what this is going to mean for you, Mark? You're going to be watching brand new Red Dwarf.
I know, right?
You're finally going to be watching brand new Red Dwarf about 10, 13 years after everyone else.
And here's the thing. We prolonged it with lots and lots of specials. As we can joke 100 times about how much Mark likes a special. And I do. I like talking about random shit. I like the challenge of something that isn't the standard look at an episode of something you like and talk about it. I do like that challenge. And I don't know how many specials we're going to do now because I just want to see all the new Red Dwarf. I've been so motivated by the announcement by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor that they're producing new stuff that I almost feel like we should rush, maybe not rush, but kind of push forward to make sure we're ready for when the new stuff's released.
And that might mean, for those people listening, that might not mean that you're going to get content as quickly as what we would record it. What we're saying is that we want to get Mark and Colin Mark and Colin updated to where we are. So then if we have got new material, all five of us can view that new material. It might be that we have some gaps and specials in between, of course. But what we're saying is that we want to get you up to date with everything. That's what we're saying.
It was such a cool gimmick that Mark's not seen any of this shit. Let's keep it secret and let's have Kurt and Matt talk shit behind his back and make him not understand shit.
Oh, God damn it. Kurt, I just realised we're not going to be able to make fun of him anymore.
I know. Right? And
we've got 11 and 12 to go yet, though. We're all right.
I want to almost be able to look at the contemporary stuff when it drops. And since we've been doing this, 2.5, nearly 3 years. The only thing that has dropped in that entirety is the
3 million
documentary.
Years.
Yeah, the documentary 3 billion years, which is the only episodes I've not listened back to. I've listened to all of our own episodes back, so I know what we've talked about, but I deliberately avoided those because I knew you were talking about the Dave stuff, and I don't want spoilers.
Was the Promised Land before?
3 million years was... can't remember now.
Promised Land was like 5 minutes before we launched. Not long, but it was just before we'd launched, I think.
I can't remember when it was, but I know that because it was like weekly, over 3 weeks, because we recorded the episodes on it, didn't we?
Yeah, it was 3 weeks that we recorded, yeah.
We did series 1, about series 1 of Red Dwarf, around the time Promised Land was released. And I didn't watch it, again, because I hadn't seen anything. And my love of Red Dwarf was always strong, but doing this podcast means that it's kind of hurt that I've not been able to catch up now because I've got so much more into Red Dwarf again in a nostalgia way, but also in the fact that it's fucking brilliant.
And on that note, we're going to close up because we all want to go to sleep apart from Mark. So we'll make it really sharp. Where can people find you online, Mark?
At Mark Adams HC on both Twitter and Instagram. My Twitter is vaguely interesting because I talk about all stuff. My Instagram is not because I talk about my job as a humanist celebrant.
Excellent. And Matt, where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter under Pick a Disc, which is about my music podcast, blah, 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 blah. You can also Ask Me About Loom under the same name on Twitter and Instagram, blah, blah, blah. And now Book Club, which is the podcast that I do with you about Yellow Jackets as well. So you can find us all there.
You can find me on Linktree, which is LINKTREE, tr.ee/rmuldrake, which is RMULDRAKE, where I talk about Red Dwarf, Star Trek Picard, Yellow Jackets, X-Files, Millennium, anything you want. Maybe even some shows on my YouTube channel as well. So until next time, thank you for everyone for listening. We are looking forward to the Back to Earth stuff that we're going to be doing in the near future. Please come and continue and join us onto our journey. It's going to be fascinating, this next stage of Shipwrecked and Comatose. But until next time, remember, as always,
Why the fuck not? Queeg turns up.
Art changes over time. This might feel weird to say because the art itself doesn't physically change, but if we agree that art tells us something about the world around us, what happens to that art once the world has changed? This is the question we try to answer on Movieversaries, a film podcast on the We Made This network. I'm the host, Bo Nicholson, and in each episode my guests and I celebrate and re-evaluate films on significant anniversaries. We examine films from all over the world through a critical lens to determine if they stand the test of time by exploring their themes, performances, and techniques. This year, our focus is on movies made in years ending in 3. So far, we've covered the avant-garde classic Meshes of the Afternoon from 1943. On the other end of the spectrum, how does the technical marvel Jurassic Park hold up 30 years later? We also delve into other iconic films of their time, such as King Kong from 1933, 8 1/2 from 1963, and Return of the Jedi from 1983. From European art house to action, comedy, and horror, if a film is celebrating a significant anniversary, we're discussing it. Don't miss out. Subscribe to Movieversaries now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This podcast network.